I'm here with Minister Bowen to make an announcement arising from Angus Houston's report into asylum seeker and refugee issues. There are some other issues today which I will deal with, but we will deal with this immigration issue fully first. Minister Bowen has a booked telephone call with Papua New Guinea. We received the report from Angus Houston last week, and the Parliament did endorse the legislation necessary to implement what Angus Houston and his team referred to as a circuit breaker. That is, the commencement of processing on Nauru and PNG. But at the time we received the report from Angus Houston and his review team, we said we accepted Mr Houston's analysis that this was an integrated package, that you couldn't cherry-pick between the recommendations, that you needed to do them all. Today, Minister Bowen and I are announcing that we are actioning Mr Houston's recommendation that the number of humanitarian places be increased to 20,000. This is important because we want to send two messages to asylum seekers. Message number one, if you get on a boat, you are risking your life, you are paying a people smuggler your hard-earned money, and you are at risk of being transferred to Nauru or PNG. But message number two, if you stay where you are and you have your claim processed by the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, then there are more resettlement places available in Australia. That is the purpose of announcing the 20,000 places. That is the purpose that Mr Houston identified. Mr Houston also identified the need for some capacity building in our region, and we are making available, as an initial step, $10 million for such capacity building. I'll turn now to the Minister for Immigration, who will speak about these matters, but also give you a general update on the work that is happening on Nauru and PNG.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. Firstly, to deal with the very significant announcement of the increase in Australia's humanitarian intake. This was accepted by the government in principle, of course, when we received the Houston-Lestrange-Aristotle report, and of course we've been working very quickly on the details, and we are announcing today that the 20,000 increase will apply from this financial year, the increase to 20,000 people. This is very significant. Of course, it's important that we give people the very clear signal that there are better and safer ways available to pursue a better life in Australia, to flee persecution without taking the risky journey to Australia by boat. It's also, very importantly, the right thing to do. It builds on Australia's strong record as one of the key humanitarian settlement nations in the world. It's in line with what we put to the ALP National Conference last year to work towards the increase in our humanitarian program to 20,000, and we're very proud that we're being able to implement that this financial year. Of course, importantly, the key task of our humanitarian program must be to give as many people as possible the chance to flee persecution, to seek a better life in Australia in as safe and as orderly a way as possible. And that's what this recommendation does. This is the biggest increase to our humanitarian program in 30 years. It will mean that Australia becomes the second largest source of resettlement for UNHCR referred refugees in the world, after only the United States. Of course, it's important in terms of initial action that we provide that message to people considering whether to take the journey to Australia by boat, that there is a better way. Accordingly, as part of that 20,000, 400 immediate places are being set aside for processing in Indonesia for people who are considering whether to make that journey or not. It's very important that we work with the UNHCR and the Indonesian government, and this has been communicated to Indonesia over recent days that this was what we were planning to do. Also, I announced on Budget Day that we would be moving towards a program for community and private sponsorship of refugees, and this will be an important part of the 20,000 program. The consultation process for that has been completed, and we'll be working with not-for-profit groups, with community organisations across Australia to ensure that this year the community sponsorship program is an important part of that 20,000 humanitarian intake. In terms of the makeup of the 20,000, I know there will be interest in where this will be targeted. Of course, key groups that will figure in the 20,000 are Afghans, whether they be in Pakistan, Iran or Indonesia. Iraqi minorities, including Assyrians, Chaldeans and Mandaeans in Syria, Jordan, Turkey and Lebanon. Of course, Sri Lankan refugees will continue to figure in our program, as will Burmese in Malaysia, Thailand and India, and a particular focus, of course, on continuing developments in Syria and Egypt. And we'll continue to work with the UNHCR on key resettlement outcomes for people from the Congo, Eritreans and Ethiopians and other people in protracted situations in Africa. At this stage, the indications are that increasing the humanitarian program by an additional 6,250 places in 2012-13 will cost around $150 million, with a potential cost impact of $1.3 billion over the forward estimates. Secondly, today we're announcing the first step, the down payment and the implementation of Recommendation 3 of the Houston panel, which is increasing capacity building in our region. We have an initial payment, an initial allocation of $10 million, which will be developed in consultation with the UNHCR and other non-government organisations, with a particular focus on our near neighbours, of course, Indonesia and Malaysia, in terms of improving protection outcomes, improving the options for registration, improving the management of asylum seekers throughout our region. The report makes clear that this capacity needs to be increased very significantly, but it makes clear that this needs to be done incrementally over time. And this $10 million down payment is an important step in that process. Finally, I'd like to give you an update on the situation with Nauru and Papua New Guinea, and Nauru in particular. As you know, a reconnaissance trip took place earlier this week to both nations. This morning I spoke to Foreign Minister Keke of Nauru, who confirmed Nauru's agreement for the deployment of defence assets to begin the work on the temporary facility on Nauru. Initial aircraft can deploy following formal approval by the Australian Government, which will occur today within 24 hours. This initial deployment will consist of 30 ADF personnel. 1 or 2 aircraft, C-17s or C-130s, will deploy every day over the next week. When this is complete, there will be a full team of 120 ADF personnel on Nauru. We envisage that the capacity will be 500 on Nauru by the end of September, and of course that capacity will come online before then, and we will provide regular updates on progress in building to that capacity of 500 by the end of September. Of course, there continues to be further work with Nauru and Papua New Guinea on the implementation of agreements and assurances that are necessary under the Act to allow the designation of those countries, and I'll provide further updates, of course, next week and over the coming period.